You've seen a few videos about my turntable setup, but it's been a while since I made a video where I talk specifically about albums. So today we're going to take a look at some of the many records I've managed to accumulate over the past few months. Now I've got several records here today that I've got from a variety of sources. Some are Christmas and birthday gifts, others are things I found in local record shops, and others are from other people's collections, for which I'm very grateful. These aren't going to be presented in any strict chronological order. I'm just going to talk about what I think of them in whatever way is most interesting. So, what's first? It's Bon Iver, or Bon Iver if you're really an Anglophone. This is Bon Iver's first LP from 2011, but I just got it for Christmas this past year. I've been a bit late to the party with these folks, and not because I'd never heard of them, it's just that it took me a while to really get them. And I think that's because this group makes such unique music, especially on this particular record. These folks seem to make incredibly detailed sculptures out of sound with their music. The songs on here are haunting, beautiful, and true to life, while also being otherworldly. The cover art here seems to reflect that idea. It's a beautiful scene that, when you look closely at it, is made up of a collage of a lot of odd elements. Now the song that really sold me on this record is, of course, the iconic Holocene. It is such a beautiful song on vulnerability and the end of relationships. All in all, I really think that this is an important record in the world of mainstream indie music. And the mixture of folk, pop, and ambient aesthetics makes it really worth repeated listening. And speaking of ambient, the next album up is this one. It's Another Green World by Brian Eno, or Eno as he likes to be called on this album. This is another Christmas gift here. Brian Eno is one of those important musicians / producers whom I've always seen in the credits of music I like, but I've never actually listened to until a few years ago. I forget exactly how I first discovered Another Green World, but when I did, I was immediately taken by the sound, and I very quickly got it on iTunes. I started listening to Eno's other stuff after this, from the genre-defining ambient albums to his rock and pop albums after that, but Another Green World remains his quintessential record for me. It's the perfect mixture of his ambient and rock sounds, and it is extremely creative in every way. And that's why I realized that I needed more than iTunes to appreciate this album. So when Christmas time came around, I asked Santa for this. This is the 45 RPM half-speed mastered double LP from 2017. You can see it comes with this nice bit of paper explaining the whole mastering process, and a certificate on the inside from Abbey Road Studios, which certifies that it really, truly is a half-speed master cut from the original master tapes. So, okay, I guess in that case I'll believe them. They really did a good job on this. The quality of the vinyl is superb, and the mastering brings Brian Eno's soundscapes to life. The only flaw I found here is that on the fourth side, one of the songs has some wobble in the left channel. I've heard from forums that this is because of aging in the master tape, which is unfortunate. But overall, this is still a great record that remains timeless. I don't think I've ever heard any other record that sounds quite like this one. My favorite track has to be St. Elmos Fire. It's so upbeat, but also so ethereal and haunting. And who can resist that Robert Fripp guitar solo with those long, thin chords that sound like the aurora itself? It's unforgettable, and it really is an unforgettable album. And speaking of St. Elmos Fire, I also have St. Elmos Fire. Yes, the soundtrack to the other St. Elmos Fire, the movie. I've actually never seen this movie yet, but the music off of here is of course an icon of the 80s. I can't help but like it. I've been putting this on whenever I've been working and I need to pump myself up, or when I just need a bit of that 80s aesthetic. This record used to belong to my uncle. It was sitting in my grandma's attic actually until she gave it to me along with a few other records just a couple months ago. Apparently my uncle paid $9.99 for it. And did you know that you can also get John Parr's solo album on Atlantic Records and cassettes? Well, this has been left in the shrink wrap for about 32 years since it was released. And they say it's not good for the record to leave it like that. Plus, if you look closely, there's some sand and dirt that's gotten into the seam here. So today, we're going to do an unwrapping, 32 years too late. We're going to liberate this sleeve. Now, I've only got one take at this, so hopefully I don't do anything embarrassing in the process. Oh my. Oh, there we go. Oh, look at how pristine and untouched by UV rays that is. There. You can finally breathe. I'll put this one in a proper protective sleeve later. So my grandma also gave me several jazz records that my grandpa used to own, including this treasure. This is Buddy Rich, class of '78. This is a classic session by Rich and his band, recorded direct to disc, as you can see loudly proclaimed on the bottom here, in October 1977. Also, speaking of the cover, I'm pretty sure they shouldn't have used a wide-angle lens to shoot Buddy Rich like this. That just looks, ugh. But anyway, now, I'd wanted to hear a direct-to-disc record for a long time, since supposedly this is one of the most high-fidelity ways to create a vinyl record, since instead of recording to tape, you play live and the sound is sent directly to a cutting lathe to create the master. So the only thing theoretically between the band and the master lacquer is the mixing board. So you save a generation and supposedly get a higher quality sound as a result. Well, whether that's true or not, listening to this disc did not disappoint. Listening to the record makes you feel like you're in the same room with Buddy and his band. Everything is placed right there in front of you on the soundstage, from the trumpet blast to the pluck of the bass. And of course, the band is at the top of their game here from start to finish. This record is hopping. And I must say, Tommy Warrington is one of the few people who can make a bass solo sound great, in my opinion. My grandpa subscribed to several record clubs and got quite a few limited edition imported records like this one, and I'm glad that I'm also able to enjoy them now. Speaking of collector's editions, I've also got this collector's edition of one outstanding rock album. This one caught my eye in a record store one day because, as you can see here, it has absolutely no information on the cover at all, except for the fact that it contains one outstanding rock record. Even the label on the record itself only shows the Epic logo, and the writing credits for the songs all say either Tom, Dick, or Harry. Well, I was intrigued, and I was able to get it for only $2 because the store couldn't sell it. For that money, it was worth taking a risk. So I took it home, dropped the needle, and it turned out to be Ricochet by the Bay City Rollers. And just like the cover promised, it is quite a good rock record. Now my research shows that the album Ricochet was originally released in Canada in a brown paper bag with this plain, uncredited sleeve. The idea, I guess, was that the Rollers, as Bay City Rollers called themselves at that time, were taking a new direction with their music. And these plain sleeves would make people curious and let them discover a new kind of Bay City Rollers record without any expectations. Well, I can say honestly that the marketing worked on me. I hadn't heard a lot of stuff by the Bay City Rollers before getting this record, but I did have an impression of them as a kind of mass market teeny bopper band. And I probably wouldn't have checked this record out if I'd seen their name on it. But I actually enjoy this record. It's a fun pop rock album with some of the bombastic harmonics of Queen, some cool pre-new wave guitar tricks, and plenty of catchy hooks throughout. Now, as you may know, Ricochet was one of the last original albums by BCR, so it looks like their marketing didn't quite work out as well as they planned. But I think it was a good effort, and it's definitely worth checking out. Next, we've got an album that definitely didn't fizzle out. It's Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. One of the biggest albums of all time. What can I say about this that hasn't already been said? It's great from front to back. But, more interestingly, I've been fortunate to find a highly valued Japanese pressing of this from a seller online. Yes, this record was mastered and pressed by the Warner Pioneer Corporation of Japan, and it is a superb piece of plastic. There is barely a click to be heard on this record, and the sound is rendered in pristine detail. Now, of course, the thing that everyone loves about Japanese records is the Japanese insert in the sleeve right here. And of course, there's also the original insert that is found in every edition of the record. Now you may notice that there is a bit of a liquid or water stain here, which I think is the reason why I was able to get this record quite affordably. The jacket is also missing the obi strip that usually goes over the left side of the jacket. Now, normally all these things would hurt the market value of this record, but I honestly don't mind that so much because the record itself is just in fantastic condition, and that's really what most matters to me. Give me a great record in a beaten up sleeve and I will love and cherish it forever. Now I've got a few more records from my grandma here, but I won't show you all of them because not all of them are in the greatest condition. For example, I've got a few 10-inch 33 RPM jazz sampler LPs from Jazz Tone and Decca. These feature people like Louis Armstrong, Bobby Hackett, Charlie Parker, Art Tatum, Ruby Braff, and many others. My grandpa even wrote High Fidelity on one of them, as you can see here, so I'm sure they're great recordings. The problem is, not only are the sleeves falling apart, as you can see by the old Scotch tape on them, but the records themselves are just in unbelievably bad condition. These are just scratched to high heaven, to the point where I'm not sure if I should even play them at all. It's a real bummer. I'll have to give them a few good cleanings before I even consider putting them on a turntable. Now, another one of her records that I did play is this one, Duke Ellington's Greatest Hits. Yes, who doesn't love them some Duke? I was glad to see this one in the stack of records my grandma sent for me. There's a nice sample of his orchestra's top work on here, but unfortunately, this disc suffers from excessive remastering syndrome. If you look on the label, you'll see that it says electronically rechanneled for stereo. Now, this was a popular thing to do in the early to mid-60s when stereo records were becoming big and record companies wanted to get some extra money out of their mono records. Now, you can make a good sounding stereo mix out of a mono master if you're careful, but in the days when this record was released, stereo remastering was usually done by a bunch of studio people who thought of stereo audio as a cool gimmick, and also they'd be working with limited mixing technology, so the record would often be rushed through and have some rather odd mastering choices on it. Case in point, this record. The first track on here, Satin Doll, sounds great, but Don't Get Around Much Anymore sounds awful. Well, I shouldn't say awful, because my left ear really enjoyed it. The problem with this track is that someone decided that almost every instrument on this song should be panned all the way to the left, with only some of the bass peeking through on the right. This continues on the next track until things finally get better on Take the A Train, but the sound quality is still hit and miss over the rest of the record. Pretty disappointing. I hope to find a better release of this one soon. But, fortunately, I've got a much better sounding classic in this collection as well. Yes, here we have Louis Armstrong plays W.C. Hardy, as presented by the Great Jazz Composers series on Columbia Records. This is Armstrong's classic take on blues tunes from the legend W.C. Hardy. The sound on this one is top quality, and so is the musicianship. You can tell from listening to this that the band is having a great time playing these songs, especially on the interplay between Louis and Velma Middleton on vocals.
I'm gonna grab me a picket off somebody's fence.
Wait a minute now, wait, don't go berserk now, wait a minute.
What was that? A little picket off somebody's fence.
It really sounds like you're sitting in on a session by a group of top quality musicians, and it's wonderful. Columbia Records Collector's Series did a great job on this pressing. And the last record I'm going to feature today is another classic album, this one from the world of rock and roll. It's Jeff Beck's Wired. This one was a birthday present. It's the excellent LP from 1976 where Jeff and his boys followed up on the legendary Blow by Blow album with something similar but still noticeably original. Jan Hammer adds some great synth touches to Beck's soaring guitars. There's a lot of great tracks on here, from the opener Lead Boots to, of course, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. This is essential listening. So, that'll wrap it up for this video. Maybe you got some new ideas for music to listen to. Maybe you just made fun of my taste in albums. But either way, I'd like to thank all the local record shops where I found some of these, and especially my grandma, who gifted a lot of the vintage albums you see here today. And of course, to my grandpa, who bought and treasured these first before I inherited them. I'm glad to be able to keep up part of his collection in his memory. So, people, whatever music inspires you, I hope you make the most of it. Keep spinning those records, and I will see you soon.